This is not just another morning. This is not just another prayer. This is not just another routine day. This is a divine appointment. The fact that you opened your eyes today means heaven still has assignments for your life. The air in your lungs is proof that your story is not finished. The strength in your body is evidence that God is still writing chapters you have not yet seen. And today, before fear speaks, before distractions rise, before pressure weighs in, you will pray and you will place it fully in God's hands. Because when you pray earnestly, you stop carrying what was never meant for your shoulders. 1, earnest prayer is not casual talk. It is warfare. Earnest prayer is not polite, weak, or passive. It is intentional. It is focused. It is persistent. It is the kind of prayer that refuses to let go until peace takes over the heart. Earnest prayer says, God, I don't have the strength for this, but you do. God, I don't have the wisdom for this, but you do. God, I don't see the way through, but you already have a plan. When you pray earnestly, you are not informing God, you are aligning with God. You are stepping out of panic and stepping into power. Some of you have been worrying when you should have been worshiping. Some of you have been stressing when you should have been surrendering. Some of you have been trying to control what God is asking you to release. Today, that cycle breaks. 2, what you leave in God's hands will not fall apart. The hands of God are not weak. They are not slow. They are not careless. They are not forgetful. What you place in God's hands is placed in the safest place in the universe. You can leave your family in God's hands. You can leave your finances in God's hands. You can leave your health in God's hands. You can leave your future in God's hands. You can leave your broken heart in God's hands. You don't need to hold on after you have handed it over. You don't need to keep checking on what you already trusted God with. You don't need to take it back when fear shows up. Because what God touches, he changes. What God orders, he establishes. What God blesses, no enemy can curse. 3, God is working even when you see nothing changing. Some of the most powerful moves of God happen in silence. Roots grow underground before trees appear above ground. Seeds break in darkness before they bloom in daylight. Just because you don't see movement does not mean there is no momentum. He is shifting things behind the scenes. He's rearranging people. He is correcting paths. He is blocking dangers you never even noticed. He is preparing answers you have not yet imagined. And while you sleep, he works. While you wait, he builds. While you trust, he moves. Faith is not believing when it is easy. Faith is standing when it is silent. Faith is trusting when it is uncomfortable. 4, today choose faith over fear. Fear will talk loud. Doubt will argue with your peace. Anxiety will try to rush your decisions. But today you must decide, I will not let fear be the loudest voice in my life. I will not allow the storm to speak louder than my God. I will not shrink when God is calling me to stand boldly. Faith does not deny the problem. Faith declares that the problem is not greater than God. You don't need perfect conditions for faith to work. You don't need full clarity for trust to operate. You only need a willing heart that says, Lord, I give this to you. 5, this morning is a turning point. This prayer is not just words. This is alignment. This is reset. This is spiritual repositioning. What was heavy is becoming lighter. What was unclear is becoming focused. What felt delayed is being prepared for sudden acceleration. You are not late. You are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. You are being prepared. Morning prayer. Today we come before you with humble hearts and bold faith. We lay down every burden we have been carrying. We release every fear that has been stealing our peace. We surrender every situation that feels bigger than our strength. We pray not weakly, but earnestly. But we pray not casually, but confidently. But we pray not in fear, but in full trust. Take our worries, take our plans, .br, take our uncertainties, .br, take our battles, .br, take what we cannot fix, .br, we place them fully in your hands. Order our steps today, .br, guard our hearts today, .br, strengthen our minds today, cover our families today, .br, open doors no one can shut. Let peace rule where anxiety once lived, .br, let faith rise where fear once ruled, .br, let clarity break through confusion. We trust you completely, .br, we rely on you fully, .br, we rest in you confidently, .br, amen. Earnest prayer is not soft, casual, or convenient. It is intense, intentional, and courageous. It is not something you fit into the leftovers of your time. It is something you run to when everything feels out of control. Many people talk about prayer, but few truly enter prayer. Earnest prayer is different because it doesn't whisper when pressure rises. It roars. It doesn't retreat when opposition appears. It advances. This kind of prayer is not polite with fear. It confronts it. It is not passive with discouragement. It pushes back with authority. The moment you pray earnestly, something shifts. Not always outside of you first, but inside of you. And once your inner world changes, the battle is already turning. Here's the hook you need to hear. The enemy is not afraid of religious words, but he trembles at earnest faith. Lifeless prayers don't shake darkness, but desperate, focused, believing prayers disrupt everything. Earnest prayer doesn't sound like routine. It sounds like surrender wrapped in fire. It sounds like a heart that refuses to quit. It sounds like a soul that has run out of human options and has decided to fully depend on divine power. When earnest prayer rises, spiritual resistance intensifies because now you are no longer fighting with your own strength. Earnest prayer is warfare because it pulls you out of panic and positions you in power. When pressure hits, the natural response is to overthink, to worry, to panic, to rush. But warfare prayer does the opposite. It slows the spirit while strengthening it. It lifts vision while silencing confusion. It anchors the heart while the storm is still raging. You may still hear the thunder, but now it no longer controls your breathing. You may still see the waves, but now they no longer dictate your steps. The battlefield may still be loud, but your spirit becomes steady. Here's another hook. The reason the battle feels so intense is because your prayer is becoming dangerous. The reason the pressure increased is because heaven took your words seriously. Earnest prayer provokes movement in realms you cannot see. This is why opposition often rises right after real prayer begins. The enemy doesn't fight what is inactive. He fights what is effective. He fights what is shifting atmospheres. He fights what is breaking cycles. And when you press in anyway, even while afraid, even while tired, even while uncertain, you step into a kind of strength that doesn't come from emotions, but from alignment. Earnest prayer is not about perfect language. It is about honest desperation. There are moments when the words come easily, and there are moments when all you can offer is a groan, a tear, or a whisper. And yet those are often the most powerful prayers of all. Warfare prayer does not depend on volume. It depends on weight. It carries spiritual weight because it is fueled by trust. It carries authority because it is ored in surrender. It is not rooted in performance. It is rooted in dependency. Another hook that shakes the heart. Worry is what you do when you are carrying what you were never designed to carry. Earnest prayer is what happens when you finally lay it down. Worry drains energy. Prayer transfers weight. Worry multiplies fear. Prayer multiplies strength. Worry keeps you awake at night. Prayer lets you rest without knowing the full outcome. The same hands that form the universe are the hands you place your battles into. That is not weakness. That is strategy. When you pray earnestly, something happens to your perspective. You stop magnifying the problem and start magnifying the power above the problem. The issue may not shrink immediately, but your fear does. The circumstance may not change instantly, but your confidence does. The struggle may not disappear overnight, but your stability increases. Warfare prayer teaches your spirit how to stand without shaking, how to trust without seeing, how to believe without proof. Another hook that pulls you deeper. You are not praying because you are losing. You are praying because you are positioning yourself to win. Every sincere cry shifts spiritual ground. Every honest surrender realigns authority. Every desperate plea activates help that was waiting for permission to move. Earnest prayer is not a last resort. It is the first strike. This is why the enemy works overtime to keep people distracted, exhausted, and discouraged. A distracted believer is quieter in prayer. A tired believer is weaker in resistance. A discouraged believer doubts their authority. But the moment you choose to pray earnestly anyway, despite fatigue, despite frustration, despite fear, you step back into your rightful position as someone who fights from faith instead of fear, who speaks from conviction instead of confusion, who stands in trust instead of trembling, who moves forward even when the outcome is still forming, who refuses to collapse under pressure and instead learns how to press, how to push, how to persist, how to believe when evidence is silent and answers are still unfolding. Surrendering to God is not giving up. It is handing over what was never meant to crush your chest in the first place. Most people think peace comes when the problem disappears, but real peace shows up when control is released. Here's the hook. You don't lose strength when you surrender. You finally stop wasting it. As long as you hold the weight of every outcome, every decision, every fear, your soul stays tense, guarded, restless. But the moment you place it into God's hands, something loosens inside you. Your lungs breathe deeper. Your mind grows quieter. Your heart stops racing ahead of time. Because what you release, He receives. There is a hidden exhaustion that comes from trying to be your own protector, provider, and problem solver. It looks like strength on the outside, but inside it is draining you dry. Another hook. Anxiety is often the evidence of unauthorized control. You were never designed to carry tomorrow, and yet worry tries to make you live in it. Surrender is the invitation to come back into the present, where grace actually operates. When you release the need to manage every detail, peace moves in like a quiet authority and replaces the noise of fear. Surrender does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop strangling the outcome. There is a difference between responsibility and obsession. Responsibility does your part. Obsession tries to do God's part too. And that is where the pressure becomes unbearable. You lie down, but your mind keeps running. You smile, but your chest stays tight. You pray, but you still feel the need to control the ending. True surrender breaks that cycle. It says, I've done what I can do, and now I trust you with what I can't. Here's another hook that stirs the heart. The safest place for your life is not in your plans, your strategies, or your backup options. It is in God's hands. Human hands get tired. Human hands shake. Human hands drop things when the weight is too heavy. But divine hands do not tremble under pressure. They do not grow weak in crisis. They do not lose grip in chaos. When you place your worries there, you are not abandoning them. You are securing them. Surrender also exposes where you have been pretending to have power you never actually had. You can't control people. You can't control timing. You can't control tomorrow. You can't control outcomes. You can only control your obedience and your trust. And the moment you accept that truth, peace becomes possible. Because now your emotional stability is no longer tied to whether things go your way. It becomes anchored in the one who holds all ways. Another hook you need to feel. Control feeds fear, but surrender feeds faith. The more you try to control, the more anxious you become. The more you surrender, the steadier you grow. Peace is not the absence of storms. It is the confidence that the storm is not stronger than the hands holding your life. Even when uncertainty remains, surrender lets your heart rest inside the unknown without panic. Surrender also dismantles the illusion that you must understand everything in order to trust. Some answers won't come before obedience. Some clarity won't arrive before confidence. Faith often asks you to release before you fully see. And that is where surrender becomes real. You stop demanding explanations as conditions for your trust. You stop negotiating with fear. You stop delaying peace until problems resolve. You rest while answers are still forming. Here's another hook that shifts perspective. Peace is not found at the finish line. It is found at the place of release. The moment why, stop fighting to control what God already promised to handle. Peace becomes immediate, not future. Circumstances may stay the same for a while, but your inner world doesn't have to keep matching the chaos outside. Surrender draws a line between what you carry and what God carries. Surrender also reorders priorities. When you stop obsessing over outcomes, you start paying attention to obedience. When you stop grasping for certainty, you start walking in trust. When you stop demanding guarantees, you start discovering grace. The weight you were carrying begins to lift. Not because the load vanished, but because it is no longer resting on your soul. Another hook that cuts deep. Peace is not the reward for perfect faith. It is the gift of willing surrender. You don't need to surrender perfectly. You just need to surrender honestly. Even trembling hands can still release. Even uncertain hearts can still let go. And the moment they do, peace does not thunder in. It settles in quietly, steadily, deeply, like an unshakable calm beneath the surface of unfinished answers and unfolding outcomes and unresolved questions and silent waiting and unseen movement and quiet preparation and hidden alignment and unseen protection and delayed clarity and forming breakthroughs and shifting paths and unfolding timing and growing trust and strengthening faith and easing tension and steady breathing and softened fear and rested striving and unforced confidence and quiet assurance and gentle hope and anchored expectation and stillness that refuses to be stolen and a heart that finally learns how to rest while the battle is still moving. Just because you don't see movement doesn't mean nothing is happening. Silence is not absence. Delay is not denial. Stillness is not stagnation. Here's the hook. The most powerful shifts often happen where your eyes cannot reach and your hands cannot touch. Why? Are trained to believe that if nothing is visible, nothing is happening. But the deepest work is almost always invisible before it becomes undeniable. There is a hidden dimension to growth that never asks for your permission or your applause. Seeds don't announce when they crack open in the soil. Roots don't make noise when they stretch deeper. Foundations don't sparkle while they are being laid. Yet everything that later stands strong depends on what no one ever saw being built. Another hook. If everything changed the moment you prayed, your faith would never mature. Only your comfort would. Sometimes the delay is not punishment, it is preparation. You are standing in rooms right now that used to exist only as prayer. You are surviving storms that once terrified you in imagination. You are carrying strength you did not have before the waiting began. And you don't even realize how much has already shifted beneath your feet because you are too focused on what hasn't arrived yet. God often answers in stages, not scenes. He adjusts the heart before he adjusts the circumstances. He stabilizes the spirit before he changes the surroundings. Another hook that confronts impatience. You see moments, but God sees momentum. You see hours, but he sees histories. You see obstacles, but he sees intersections. The silence you hate may be the very space where impossible alignments are being constructed. People are being repositioned. Opportunities are being rearranged. Delays are being redirected. Threats are being diffused before they ever reach your door. The work is happening, just not where your anxiety wants to look. There is a dangerous lie that says, if God were really working, I would feel it. Feelings are unreliable interpreters of reality. Some of the most transformational seasons feel exactly like nothing at all. You wake up, go about your routine, fight the same thoughts, face the same challenges, and assume stagnation when in fact stabilization is happening. Another hook. Not every breakthrough shouts. Some breakthroughs whisper their way into your life. Waiting exposes where your trust truly lives. When answers are immediate, faith feels easy. When nothing changes, faith becomes necessary. This is where confidence is separated from comfort. You are forced to decide whether you trust the process or only the outcome, whether you believe in movement you cannot measure, whether you can rest without visible evidence. The waiting season doesn't just test patience, it trains perception. You think you are waiting on change, but often change is waiting on alignment. Some doors don't open because the heart behind them isn't ready yet. Some answers don't move because the posture of trust is still forming. Some breakthroughs don't arrive because the root of fear hasn't finished being pulled yet. Another hook that shifts the struggle, the delay is not slowing you down, it is refining your direction. There are things God is protecting you from that you will never get the full explanation for. There are missteps that never happen because unseen resistance blocked them quietly. There are relationships that drifted without drama because intervention rerouted influence. There are doors that stayed closed, not because you were rejected, but because you would have walked into rooms that would have wounded you. The unseen work is often protected before it is productive. You want answers in minutes. God shapes futures through processes. You want clarity fast. God builds stability through seasons. You want certainty now. God grows trust through unfolding. Another hook. Immediacy feels powerful, but sustainability is built slowly. The problem with instant change is that it rarely lasts. What grows in secret tends to stand in storms. The silence you're in is not empty. It is structured. It is intentional. It is layered with meaning you will only recognize later. One day you will look back and realize that the season where you thought nothing was moving was the exact season where everything essential was being positioned. The character you carry then will explain the delay you resent now. The wisdom you walk in later will justify the waiting that frustrates you today. Uncertainty doesn't shut down divine movement. It often becomes the environment where it thrives. When you run out of the illusion of control, trust has room to breathe. When timelines disappear, dependence takes over. When expectations collapse, obedience becomes pure. Another hook that reframes the unknown. Not knowing what's next does not mean nothing is next. Even now, while you question, something is forming. While you sigh, something is aligning. While you wait, something is stabilizing. While you wrestle with doubt, something is strengthening your ability to stand when the answer arrives. You may not see it yet, but motion doesn't require your observation to be real. The gears keep turning. The timing keeps unfolding. The unseen keeps shifting. The preparation keeps building. The work keeps moving forward, even when all you feel is stillness. Fear will always arrive with a loud voice and urgent demands. It will tell you to rush, to retreat, to protect yourself, to expect the worst before it even happens. It will speak in worst case scenarios and paint pictures of loss before anything has actually gone wrong. Here's the hook you need to hear. Fear is persuasive, but it is not prophetic. Just because it speaks does not mean it tells the truth. Faith is a choice you ache in the presence of fear, not the absence of it. Every day you wake up, you are handed a decision before you even leave your bed. Will you let fear lead, or will you let faith govern? Fear tells you what could go wrong. Faith reminds you who is already in control. Fear tells you to shrink back. Faith tells you to stand firm. Fear tells you to wait until conditions feel safe. Faith tells you to move because obedience is safer than delay. And the battle is not always dramatic. It often happens quietly in your thoughts, in your breathing, in the way you interpret what hasn't even happened yet. Here's another hook. Fear rarely looks like panic at first. It often looks like overthinking. It disguises itself as logic, as caution, as being realistic. But underneath all that calculation is a trembling question. What if this doesn't work out? Faith answers that question differently. Faith doesn't deny the risk. It simply refuses to let the risk be the ruling voice. It says, even if I don't have guarantees, I do have God. Even if I don't have control, I do have trust. Even if I don't have clarity, I do have direction. Choosing faith over fear is not a feeling. It is a repeated decision. Some days you choose it with confidence. Other days you choose it with shaking hands and a racing heart, but you still choose it. And each time you do, something inside you grows stronger. Fear weakens when it is not obeyed. Faith deepens when it is exercised. The more you step forward while afraid, the quieter fear becomes and the steadier faith grows. Another hook that challenges resistance. Fear promises safety, but delivers paralysis. Faith appears risky, but produces freedom. Fear freezes you in the familiar, even when the familiar is suffocating. Faith moves you into the unknown, where growth actually lives. Fear keeps you cycling through the same mental rooms. Faith opens doors you need. Imagine touching. Fear convinces you that staying still is safer than stepping out. Faith teaches you that stagnation is the true danger. Fear thrives on what ifs. Faith thrives on who is. Fear asks, what if I fail? Faith declares God is still with me. Fear asks, what if I'm abandoned? Faith declares I am never alone. Fear asks, what if it falls apart? Faith declares, even if it does, I will not collapse with it. The questions of fear never end, but the foundation of faith never moves. Here's another hook that cuts deep. Fear grows strongest where trust grows weakest. The more you try to control every outcome, the louder fear becomes. The more you attempt to secure every detail, the heavier anxiety feels. But when you loosen your grip and tighten your trust, fear begins to lose its oxygen. It cannot survive long in a heart that keeps choosing faith against it. Choosing faith over fear also reshapes your language. Fear speaks in conclusions. Faith speaks in possibilities. Fear says it's over. Faith says it's not finished. Fear says I can't. Faith says God can. Fear says you've waited too long. Faith says timing is still working. Your words don't just describe your mindset, they reinforce it. Every time you speak from fear, you feed it. Every time you speak from faith, you starve it. Another hook that reframes strength. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to let fear issue commands. You can still feel afraid and move forward. You can still feel uncertain and obey. You can still feel weak and believe. Faith does not require emotional confidence. It requires spiritual decision. And often the bravest thing you will ever do is act while afraid instead of waiting to feel fearless. Fear is future focused in the most destructive way. It drags tomorrow's imagined disasters into today's real peace. Faith also looks forward, but it does so with EXP, expectation instead of dread. It does not deny the possibility of difficulty. It simply trusts that difficulty will never outgrow grace. Fear assumes collapse. Faith anticipates covering. Fear braces for loss. Faith leans into provision. Here's another hook that changes posture. Fear watches storms. Faith speaks to them. Fear studies the size of the waves. Faith studies the authority it has been given. Fear bows to pressure. Faith rises with conviction. Fear reacts. Faith responds. Fear trembles. Faith trusts. And the difference between the two is not personality. It is perspective. The daily battle is not outside of you. It is within you. One voice will always tell you to retreat for safety. Another will quietly whisper to advance in trust. One will urge you to protect yourself at all costs. The other will invite you to place your life in stronger hands than your own. And every day, by what you choose to listen to, you decide which voice shapes your steps, which one sets your pace, which one defines your future, which one gets the final word in your heart. Every morning you wake up is not just a continuation of yesterday. It is an interruption of yesterday's limits. You are not stepping into a reused moment. You are stepping into a fresh opening of mercy, possibility, and alignment. Here's the hook. The moment your eyes open, heaven has already voted for your future again. Breath in your lungs is proof that your story is still under construction, not under review. Night may have carried worry, regret, and exhaustion, but morning does not inherit any of it unless you bring it forward with you. Too many people wake up carrying yesterday like a backpack full of bricks. Old failures, old fears, old disappointments, old wounds, old expectations that never came true. But a new morning was never designed to be lived with old weight. Every sunrise is a spiritual reset button, even when the circumstances look the same. Another hook. The environment may not have changed overnight, but your position within it can. The power of a morning is not in what the world did while you slept. It is in what God prepared while you were unaware. A turning point does not always feel explosive. Sometimes it feels quiet. Sometimes it feels ordinary. Sometimes it feels like nothing special at all. That is why many people miss it. They are waiting for thunder when the shift arrives as a whisper. They are looking for fireworks when the breakthrough arrives as a decision. They think a turning point must shake the ground, not realizing that real direction changes often happen in the soul first. Another hook, the most important turns in life rarely announce themselves. They reveal themselves later through changed outcomes. Every morning carries a quiet question beneath the surface. Will you repeat the pattern or will you break it? Will you react the way you always have, or will you respond with new vision? The power of the morning is not in what it brings automatically. It is in what it invites intentionally. You can wake up with the same habits, the same mindset, the same expectations, and relive the same emotional script. Or you can wake up aware that today does not owe you yesterday's limitations. Another hook that shakes routine. Just because the calendar changed doesn't mean your direction did, but every morning gives you the right to choose again. You may not control everything that happens today, but you do control whether you show up as who you used to be or who you are becoming. The morning does not force transformation, but it offers the doorway to it. You decide whether you walk through. A turning point does not require perfect conditions. It rarely begins when everything is lined up. It often begins right in the middle of uncertainty, confusion, pressure, and unfinished answers. That is what makes it a turning point and not just a smooth transition. When you start choosing differently while things still feel unstable, you shift the atmosphere before the situation shifts. Another hook. Real change does not wait for confirmation. It responds to conviction. Every morning, you are standing at the intersection of what was and what can be. One path leads back into old reactions, old thinking, old fear, old emotional habits. The other path leads forward into trust, obedience, discipline, faith, and growth. Both paths feel familiar at first. That is a danger. Habit is comfortable even when it is destructive. But the discomfort of choosing differently is often the birthplace of new direction. A turning point is not always a single event. It is often a series of quiet decisions that slowly bend the direction of your life. You wake up and choose to speak differently. You wake up and choose to believe differently. You wake up and choose to forgive differently. You wake up and choose to try again instead of shutting down. And over time, what once felt impossible starts to feel natural. Another hook, what feels hard today may become your normal tomorrow if you don't stop choosing it. Not every morning will feel powerful. Some mornings you wake up tired. Some mornings you wake up burdened. Some mornings you wake up discouraged before you even leave your bed. But the emotional state of your waking does not cancel the potential of your day. A turning point is not based on how you feel. It is based on what you choose while feeling that way. You don't have to wake up inspired to move in faith. You only have to wake up willing. Another hook that reframes weakness, some of the strongest redirections in life begin on the weakest mornings. The day you feel least capable may be the day alignment becomes most visible later. The day you fee. Our most unsure may be the day you choose trust in its purest form, without emotional hype, without certainty, without guarantees. And that kind of faith carries unusual weight. A morning is not just a unit of time, it is a statement of continuation. It is evidence that the opportunity to shift direction has not expired. It is proof that correction is still possible, growth is still available, and purpose is still in motion. You may not be able to rewrite what already happened, but the moment you wake up, you are authorized to rewrite what happens next. Every sunrise is a reminder that destiny does not only move through dramatic moments, it also moves through repeated awakenings where you quietly choose to keep going in a new direction instead of returning to the old one. Prayer is not the finish line. It is the ignition point. Too many people treat prayer like a closing ritual instead of an opening command. They pray, feel a moment of peace, and then step back into the day exactly the same. But real prayer is not designed to replace action. It is designed to power it. Here's the hook. If your prayer never changes how you move, it hasn't yet reached its full purpose. Prayer does not end your responsibility. It sharpens it. When you pray with faith, your walk must begin to match your words. You can't ask for courage and then keep avoiding the step that requires it. You can't pray for growth and then refuse discomfort. You can't ask for open doors and stand still when opportunity knocks. Prayer gives you direction, but obedience gives you distance. Another hook, heaven responds to movement as much as it responds to mouths. Faith that stays silent in action often becomes stagnant in results. Bold action doesn't mean reckless behavior. It means obedient momentum. It means you move even when your knees still feel unsteady. It means you speak even when your voice shakes. It means you show up even when confidence feels low. Prayer doesn't remove fear from the equation. It reorders its position. Fear may still ride along, but it no longer sits in the driver's seat. And once fear stops leading, progress begins to breathe. Another hook that shifts accountability. God strengthens what you step into, not what you avoid. Many are waiting for overwhelming confidence before they move, not realizing that confidence often shows up after obedience, not before it. The strength you are asking for is waiting for you on the other side of the step you keep postponing. Movement is often the corridor through which power travels. Prayer aligns your heart, but action proves your trust. Trust is not proven in what you say privately. It is revealed in what you choose publicly. When you forgive instead of retaliate, you prove it. When you persist instead of quitting, you prove it. When you give instead of hoarding, you prove it. When you obey instead of delaying, you prove it. Another hook. Faith becomes visible not in your words, but in your decisions. Action after prayer also requires consistency, not bursts. One bold moment cannot carry what only daily discipline can sustain. You don't build a transformed life with one courageous choice. You build it with repeated ones. Prayer lights the fire, but habits keep it burning. The danger is not that people never act, it's that they act once and expect lifelong change. Momentum is maintained the same way it was started, one obedient step at a time. Another hook that confronts comfort. Comfort is the enemy of progress after prayer. Once peace replaces panic, it becomes tempting to settle instead of advance. But peace is not permission to stop. It is fuel to go forward without fear. Real peace doesn't lull you into rest alone. It steadies you for movement without anxiety. If peace leads you into passivity, it has been misunderstood. There is also resistance that comes after prayer, not before it. Difficulty doesn't always mean your prayer failed. Sometimes it means your action threatens what was comfortable. Doors don't always open effortlessly. Some resistance is confirmation that you are finally pushing against the right obstacle. Another hook, not every closed feeling is a closed door. Sometimes it is just the pressure that comes from leaving familiar ground. Action also reveals where your faith is still growing. You may pray for patience and immediately face delays. You may pray for strength and immediately meet pressure. You may pray for discipline and immediately face distraction. The test is not whether challenges appear. The test is whether you keep moving when they do. Prayer prepares you for resistance. It does not eliminate it. Another hook that sharpens resolve. Progress rarely feels dramatic. It often feels repetitive. Showing up again, choosing again, believing again, trying again, obeying again. The enemy of bold action is not always fear. It is boredom, fatigue, and the slow grind of ordinary faithfulness. But ordinary faithfulness is what produces extraordinary outcomes over time. Prayer gives you vision, but action gives that vision legs. Without action, even the clearest spiritual insight remains theoretical. You don't just pray for change, you participate in it. You don't just ask for direction, you walk in it. You don't just seek transformation, you cooperate with it. Another hook, unanswered pray. Errors are not always delayed by God. Sometimes they are delayed by hesitation. Bold action also requires endurance. Some steps will feel exciting at first and heavy later. Some decisions will feel powerful initially and costly with time. That doesn't mean they were wrong. It means they were real. Faith that only moves when it feels good is not yet mature. Mature faith keeps walking when the thrill fades, but the calling remains. Action after prayer is how spiritual confidence becomes visible authority. The more you act in faith, the less permission fear has to speak. The more you obey, the more natural trust becomes. The more you move forward, the less powerful hesitation feels. Momentum trains your mind to believe what your mouth has already been declaring. And eventually, something shifts inside you. You stop seeing yourself as waiting for change and start seeing yourself as participating in it. You stop expecting everything to happen to you and start realizing that something powerful is happening through you. You begin to walk as someone who has already prayed and therefore already trusts, already released, already surrendered, already aligned, already empowered to step forward, even when the path is still forming and the evidence is still catching up. And the results are still unfolding and the breakthrough is still approaching and the outcome is still being shaped by the hands you learn to trust enough to move without guarantees.